Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm going to turn this burner on first to get us started there so it will heat up. Let's see, we're going to go way up there. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, so you've got your handouts. The first 4 pages of the handouts are from the Food Safety Gov website, which is the federal government's website on food safety. And the facts, according to them, are 1 in 6 people will have a foodborne illness during the holidays. So don't be one of those 1 in 6. Practice food safety. And we can talk about this more later and have questions about those types of things. But definitely, definitely be safe with your turkey. If you're hosting Thanksgiving and you haven't started thawing that turkey yet, now is the time. We're a week into countdown. So definitely read their safety tips. They're well worth it. So tonight, what we're going to be talking about, we've got 3 vegetable dishes for you to sample. We're going to be using our trusty burner that we've used a number of times. This is standard black cast iron. It's heavy. You can definitely hurt people with it, as we've learned from different TV shows, and we won't. It lasts a lifetime. I've had this piece probably over 30 years, and it works great. I can put it on my grill. I can put it in my oven, on the stovetop, but it is heavy. So you have to make sure that you're prepared for that. It also gets hot, so when it's heated up, I can't hold on to this handle or onto this handle. You've got to use covers or pot holders to do that. This is a 12-inch skillet, which is bigger than what most people use on a day-to-day basis. The cast iron skillet, the 10-inch size, is kind of the standard that most people use on a regular basis. But for what we're doing tonight, we're going to let that get heated up for a few minutes. And while we're heating those up for we're cooking 1 recipe, but we're sampling all 3 that are in your packet. So I'm going to talk to you a couple of things about those recipes first. So if you turn to what's listed as page 1, but it's really page 5 in the handouts, roasted root vegetables. This is a very versatile recipe. If you don't like butternut squash, don't put butternut squash in there. If you don't like turnips, don't put it in there. You mix and match whatever root vegetables you like. This recipe calls for carrots, and I had a crazy day, and you will see there are no carrots in there because the carrots were in a different part of the refrigerator, and an hour later I realized I never peeled any carrots. How come? And then it's like, oh, because they're not in there. So normally it has carrots in it, which are my granddaughter's favorite part of it because she's not fond of most of the other things, so she just eats carrots. But it's really a simple roasted dish that you can totally customized to what you like and what you don't like. The best part about making this dish is having leftover from this dish. If you like a butternut squash soup, you have all the fixings right here in this recipe. Whatever leftovers you have, throw them in your blender with a little bit of chicken stock, blend it right up, and you have instant soup to heat up that will be fabulous. All this herbs, seasonings, it's all right there and ready for you. It's also great, you can turn that soup mixture into a nice sauce, adding a little bit of cream or milk to put on top of pasta or ravioli. So it's great that you have leftovers from that. But sometimes you don't because it is one that goes very easily. It's also a recipe you can make the day before. So if you're hosting Thanksgiving, you don't have to do all the cooking on Thanksgiving Day. You know, especially if your oven space is at a premium, consider what you can do ahead of time. I always do pies and desserts beforehand. We don't try and make any of those on the day of the event. I do about half of my side dishes beforehand. I don't do a lot of cooking in crock pots, but we certainly use crock pots a lot during the holidays to keep food hot and warm so that we're following all the safety rules about keeping things at the right temperature, so that if you're making this dish ahead of time the day before, then it's easy an hour or so before the meal starts, throw it into the crock pot, crank it right up, and you've got it heated up without it taking up any of your oven space or your microwave space. So those are great tools. The next recipe is savory green beans. And again, The joy of cooking for yourself is you can customize anything. If you don't like onions with green beans, then don't put onions in your green beans. This recipe calls for green beans, for onions and garlic, a little bit of Dijon mustard. What else is it? It's got the garlic and then bacon. So again, the bacon you can cook ahead of time, put that in your refrigerator, then when you're ready to cook the dish, toss it in at the last minute. You're going to juggle how you cook to make sure you've got everything working out in your kitchen. The last dish, the creamy spinach and mushrooms, that's the dish we're going to make here tonight. And if your family's not a fan of the mushrooms, just make the spinach. If they're not a fan of the spinach, just make the mushrooms. It's that easy and simple, but it's a very easy dish. Because I've had kind of a crazy past few days, not only did I mess up with the carrots, this recipe calls for using butter. I brought the olive oil, not the butter. But a fat is a fat is a fat when it comes to cooking. So you can substitute the olive oil for the butter, or you could use a coconut oil. You could use whatever fat you like. So tonight we're going to use that. We're going to turn our skillet down a little bit now that it's really good and steamy hot. So I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of olive oil in my pan. And this recipe calls for 16 ounces of mushrooms. And that's 2 of the little square packages of mushrooms. You can buy them pre-sliced. You can buy them whole and slice them yourself. Whatever the best buy of the week is, that's what you go with. So this right here is the Baby Bella mushrooms because they were on sale for 99 cents versus all the others that were $1.50. So that's what we have in it for tonight. Now, Julia Child had a very famous saying about mushrooms. Don't crowd the mushrooms. She talked about that all the time, that if you want your mushrooms to brown, they need to be 1 layer in the pan. We're not browning our mushrooms, we're cooking our mushrooms. So we don't care if they're crowded in here. So we're throwing them all in there, and we're just going to cook them until they're almost done. And that'll take us a few minutes, but not too long. And like I said, you can use any kind of mushrooms you want. White button mushrooms, the Baby Bellas, any type, whatever you've got on hand, or whatever the best bargain is of the week. Go with that. Make the most of it all the way around. Kristen, could you get me a small glass of water, please? Cast iron cooks much faster than a lot of other cookware. So sometimes what you'll find is things can get dry very quickly. So I almost always have a glass of water sitting next to the stove so that I can add some moisture if needed. And these mushrooms are looking like they're going to be a little dry fast before they're cooked, so they're going to get a little water to steam in there. And if you haven't met her before, this is my daughter-in-law, Kristen, who is the greatest helper around. We're always lucky to have her. All right, so I just put a couple of tablespoons of water in here, and you hear it sizzle and steam. And these mushrooms are almost there because cast iron does cook much hotter, so you have to make sure that you're monitoring your temperature because if not, you can burn things very quickly. And even if your recipe calls for a high temperature on cast iron, you want to stick with a medium or a low because it's going to go hot super fast and you'll be not in a good place very quickly. So now we've got our mushrooms, which are really looking very good, nice and flavorful. Oh, let me get this over here. So now I'm going to start to work in my spinach. Now, this might look like a lot of spinach, but if you've ever cooked fresh spinach, you know it reduces down to about 1/4 of what you started with, sometimes even less than that. And I could have used a pot that had a bigger side, but I was stubborn and really wanted to bring this piece of cast iron tonight. So I'm going to just keep working it in and kind of pressing it down a little bit, being careful not to touch the sides of the cast iron. And as we work that down for a few minutes, now I'm going to switch to my tongs so I can really grab it and kind of toss it. I'm going to pull my mushrooms up onto the top so it gives the heat on top of the spinach as well as on the bottom. And I still have enough moisture in there. And at this point, you really don't want to add more moisture because the spinach is going to start to release all of its moisture. And while you don't think of a leaf of spinach being really wet and drippy, once that heat hits it, it's like, how did all that moisture come out of spinach? Where was it hiding? It's like cucumber juice that just keeps going. So always make sure you don't add a lot of liquid because the spinach will just keep reducing. Now this is 2 8-ounce packages of spinach, so that if you go to Aldi's, that's they come in 8-ounce packages, so it's 2 of those. Nice and easy. And again, you can just do your mushrooms with this dish and make the sauce. All right, so now as it's going to work itself down, we're making sauce with Boursin cheese. If you've never had Boursin cheese, it's kind of a fancy cream cheese. It's got herbs and spices all into it. It's kind of chunky and crumbly. Can make your hands very messy. It can be a little pricey. I watch for it to go on sale and buy it when it's on sale because it will last in your refrigerator for about 3 months. And you can also freeze it. So when it goes on sale, and I know the holidays are coming, then I try to stock up and buy it at that point. But it's a very soft and crumbly kind of cheese. And if it's not something that you're excited about, you can substitute cream cheese and add your own herbs and flavorings in there. You could also use an herbed goat cheese. Would work out okay. The idea is you're going to let this melt and it's going to become an amazingly creamy sauce that you've had to do very little work for. And if it needs moisture, then we will add some heavy cream to it, but sometimes it doesn't need it at all. Well, I don't, yeah, let's see. So again, I'm going to start working the spinach to the top, the mushrooms to the top, and the cheese to the bottom. And it melts very quickly. And our spinach, as you can see, is not heaping full anymore. It's coming right down to the bottom here. Let's see, we'll get this all off of here. Now, for cast iron, metal tools and wooden tools are your best friend for that. Some of the silicone tools are not rated at a high enough heat, and they can burn, and they can start to leave residue on the bottom of your cast iron. You never want that to happen. So for most things, I use wooden tools, and then I use an assortment of metal tools, depending on what the job is. If I'm making some home fries or hash browns, I'm definitely using my metal tools because that gets right underneath there. I'm going to pull this up a little bit so you can see. What you'll see is the spinach is all nice and soft, and I'm getting this really great sauce. And I didn't have to do anything to create that sauce other than stir that cheese in there. And it's full of flavor because it's got herbs, spices, seasonings all right there. And it's cheesy and it's delicious and it's done. That quick, that fast, that easy, we made that recipe. And again, it's a recipe that you could make the day before, pop it into your microwave to heat it up, put it into a crock pot. It has a lot of sauce because our spinach is so rich and wet, so I don't need any cream. If I let this sit in my refrigerator and tomorrow I was going to reheat it to serve it, if it seemed a little dry, then I could add some cream. But right now, it's perfect, absolutely perfect. It's just a nice, beautiful sauce, wonderful cream spinach that when I served it not too long ago, it was the first dish to be totally empty. And right away, 3 people said, "You have more in the kitchen, right?" And it's like, "No, I didn't bring any more of that." So it is, if your group likes mushrooms and spinach, it's a total hit. I'm going to leave this sitting in this dish right here so you can see how much it makes for the one recipe. At this moment, we're going to take our break. You're going to get your sampling. Tonight we're doing things a little differently. Because not everybody likes their veggies. I know that's hard to believe, but not everybody's a veggie fan. So I didn't want to plate up vegetables to have you say, "I'm not eating that one." So you get to plate for yourself tonight. We also have fresh roasted turkey, and we have a homemade cranberry sauce. So you get to sample all of those pieces. What I will ask is take a small serving for a sampling, and then after we've finished the whole program, we can definitely have seconds after we've fed our lovely library staff too. Are we all good? And it's hot. So it's hot, it's good. So we're taking a break now. Get your food, see how much is in here, and then we'll come back for more fun. All right, so we're back to you're sampling the food that we have right here. Simply, quick, fast, 10-minute side dish, easy. Same as the green beans. That's a quick, fast, easy side dish. Takes about 15 minutes to assemble. It literally takes you longer to cook the bacon than anything else in that whole dish. Nice and easy. The recipe calls for using frozen green beans. You can use fresh green beans, and it works just fine as well. And again, the root vegetables, you can customize them any way you want to, so that the cooking time totally depends on how small you make the pieces. If you're more into chunky kind of vegetables, it's going to take a little bit longer to cook. If you're into smaller bite-sized type of vegetables, 25 minutes is pretty much a done kind of deal. So they're all easy side dishes that have lots of good fall flavors that can really make people very happy. So now let's talk about leftovers, because we know that Thanksgiving and every holiday is about the fact you've made all this food and you have leftovers. So turkey is easy. There's a million things to do with turkey. My one word always is, after 4 days, if you haven't eaten it, put it into your freezer. And right in that safety flyer, that's exactly what they're telling you. Don't keep pushing it for another day and another day. You will end up with some food poisoning, and that is not a fun thing to ever have. If you ever have had food poisoning, you will never forget it. And you will remember the food that you ate that caused that forever. So take caution with that. But for these vegetables, we already talked about the root vegetables, how you can turn it into a soup, you can turn it into a sauce for a pasta. You can also make it into a casserole. Throw some of the turkey in there. If you've got leftover stuffing, throw stuffing into it. You can top it with a little cheese if you like to do that. So it's very versatile in the way of vegetables. The green beans, those are really great to make a stir fry out of later, because you can add whatever kind of vegetables, noodles, rice that you'd like to for a stir fry. So that's a very easy leftover item for that. The creamy spinach and mushrooms makes an absolutely fabulous sauce to put over any kind of pasta, buttered noodles, ravioli, because you've already got a nice sauce, you've got the vegetables. All you need to do is cook some pasta and toss it together, sprinkle a little Parmesan in there, and you can make a lot of people very happy very quickly. It's also nice to make that into a pizza. Take a pizza crust, spread the sauce right onto the pizza crust, put some cheese, then your spinach and mushrooms on top. You've got a really good pizza that's quick and fast. You can do that on a regular pizza crust. You can do it on a garlic bread type of a crust, any type of crust that you like. It's also great to toss it into a soup. to add extra flavor to your broth and vegetables. So all of those dishes are quick and easy for doing leftovers, stretching it lots of different ways. I apologize that I did not put the cranberry sauce recipe in here. I'm happy to send it to everyone if you would like it. It was kind of an afterthought that I realized I had bought twice the amount of cranberries that I needed to have in my refrigerator. So it's like, oh, look, let's cook some of these for this week too. So they were on sale, and I guess I went a little crazy with them. So you got cranberry sauce on top of that. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is pumpkin pie bites. This is a standard pumpkin pie recipe, and Kristen's going to put those out for you in just a couple of minutes. It's a regular pumpkin pie recipe that you can make the pie and pour it right into a pie shell. Simple and easy. Or if you're looking for something that's more finger food, you can make pumpkin pie bites, which is what we've done tonight, where you're using a cupcake pan and you're making them into bite-sized pieces. Instead of using a pie crust, you're using just crumbled vanilla wafers. And it makes a nice little crust that's simple, that's easy. You don't have to have regular pie crust. The nice thing about this pumpkin pie recipe is a lot of pumpkin pie recipes call for you to use canned milk or various different forms of milk. This uses regular milk that you have on hand in your refrigerator, and you can use any kind. If your household uses almond milk, you can use almond milk in this recipe. If you use a milk that's lactose-free, that will work. It's a very basic, simple custard recipe. Any kind of milk will make it work. You don't need a special canned milk, so it's not a separate item you've got to buy and have on hand. You can use whatever you do have on hand. Kristen, are we ready for dessert back there? All right. So here's a trivia question for you. Pumpkin pie, does it need to be refrigerated or does it not? Well, when you go into a grocery store, you often see stacks and stacks of pumpkin pie sitting on a table. I don't know how long it's been there, how long it hasn't been there. According to our lovely friends at Food Safety, because it is an egg and milk-based custard, it's a refrigerator item. So it definitely should be refrigerated for the long run. However, it doesn't need to stay at super, super low temperatures. So if you have a garage that's nice and cold, you can definitely use that. You can use a cooler with some ice at the bottom and a pan so that you're maximizing refrigerator space. It's the same. If you're thawing your turkey, coolers are a great thing for using for thawing a turkey, so you're not taking up that valuable real estate in the refrigerator. Put your turkey into a cooler, fill it full of ice water, change out your ice water every hour or so it stays good and cold. Your turkey's going to be thawed out in 24 hours, and you've saved all that space in the refrigerator, not having to rearrange and have it sit there for 4 and 5 days. So again, those are all pieces in the safety document, so use them. All during the holidays, we're all juggling, what's going in the fridge, where is it going, where can I find the room. If you've got a cold corner in your basement that gets cold enough, utilize that for cold things. Coolers, not just the summer, use them in the winter too. So, Kristen, if you would come to get the mic, then if we've got any questions.
For the pumpkin pie bites, I don't have ginger. Is that okay if I make everything but
All right, so the question is for the pumpkin pie bites, if you don't have ginger, is it okay to still make it without ginger? And yes, the question is absolutely. Same as some people aren't fans of nutmeg, you can leave the nutmeg out. It's whichever ones you want is perfectly fine. That's the nice thing of customizing. Same as if you have what's called pumpkin pie spice, which a lot of people have that on hand, you can substitute that using the same quantities instead of this. Anybody else with a question?
Instead of canned pumpkin, can I use fresh pumpkin that I roast in the oven?
Yes, you can use fresh pumpkin that you've roasted in the oven. The one thing I want to always say is if your pumpkin is very wet, then let it sit in a strainer for a while. Some pumpkins have a lot more moisture and liquid in them than what a canned pumpkin does. So you just let it drain. The same as if you've grown your own pumpkins and you put them into the freezer, many times that will pull out more liquid from them. So always just drain out that excess liquid, or you're going to have a pie that's just too watery.
Earlier when you were saying about the spinach and mushroom going on for pizza or garlic bread, if the dough isn't already cooked, like if it's just the regular raw dough you bought right from the store and you flattened it out, would that cook all right?
It will depend on how thick your dough is. If your dough is very thick, if you like a really thick crust type pizza, then I would suggest cooking the dough on your pan for about 10 minutes first and then topping it. If it's a medium to thin, then yep, it'll cook just fine. Yep.
So for the creamy spinach and mushrooms recipe, how many people does this recipe feed, would you say?
The recipe that we just made here, I would say that feeds 4 people. If they're really hearty appetites, then you're going to have less. But I would say that feeds 4 people who really enjoy spinach and mushrooms. If you've got some pickier people, you're going to stretch it to 6 to 8. So, yeah. Right, exactly.
In the spinach recipe, can one use frozen leaf spinach?
You can use frozen spinach. The difference would be you need to thaw the spinach thoroughly and squeeze out all of the moisture. Because if not, you're going to have a very watery sauce. It's not going to be the same consistency as what you have right now.
And on the pumpkin pie, the can of pumpkin, sometimes they also sell squash in the can. Can you use squash in place of the pumpkin?
Correct. You could use canned sweet potato, you could use canned squash, you could use canned pumpkin. All of those are squashes and they're all interchangeable. So, yep, you certainly could. All right. Thank you so much for coming and enjoy.